Hi, this is Jim Hall, and this is Satoshi Inoue-san. And we're here to talk to guitar players who are interested in playing jazz. We're still interested in learning about it. We're doing volume 1 of a 3-part instruction series. And this particular volume is aimed at players who maybe have a background in rock and roll or blues or folk music or classical music or even music from other cultures. I think one of the great things about jazz is that it is a cross-cultural music. It's kind of a universal language. Maybe we should give them an A to tune up to just in case at first, and I'll tune up with you too at the same. That's about where the pitch is going to be. The first thing that we played is called Big Blues, which is something I wrote a while ago. It's dedicated to a great saxophone player named Stanley Turrentine. And some of the notes were supposed to sound like Stanley's playing, like this sort of thing, you know, which he does on the saxophone. We thought we'd start with the blues because that seems to be kind of a common ground between. Where did you first? You started in rock and roll.
I was influenced by actually British rock music.
British rock music.
At the time, they called quote unquote progressive rock.
Progressive rock, right?
But it's a rock. You know? And yeah, so I'm used to blues scale.
Right.
That time.
Plays like a kind of a rock and roll blues scale, or just the kind of, it's like a 5-tone scale basically. Yeah, that's what it is. There's pentatonic scales in Japanese music too, I think, right?
I think so.
You think so? You should find out. That blues, the particular blues, has a kind of a simple motive to it, which is just. And then it's the same idea up. We thought it might be fun to see how, even if I just pared that down to the first motive, and we played the same motive over those 3 basic chords, the 3 basic chords being the F7th, right? And then the B flat, F7th, B flat, 7th, back to F, and then B flat for a while. He's playing a major 3rd. He's playing, Satoshi's playing an A natural, and I'm playing that, it's called a blues note there. And then a C7, and then a B flat 7. So that's practically a pentatonic scale.
Plus this.
Oh, you're right. Yeah.
What do you call this?
I guess you'd call that a blues note, or you can get that by bending the string too. Yeah, we won't talk a whole lot about technical stuff too much, like how to hold the head, because Satoshi plays the guitar quite differently from the way I do. Technically, he holds it differently, and his hand is. You tend to play a little bit more above the strings, I think, than I do. My hand tends to get down in this position a bit. George Benson plays that way. Yeah. I think I pull down on the strings a little more than you do, maybe. Anyway, let's try that same progression, and instead of me, what I did with the motive was I did this thing, then I just opened it up. And then as an answer, because I feel that the blues is really a kind of a story with two questions and an answer. Then the answer, that sort of thing. So let's just do it with the first part of that part, and I'll play the same motive, and you'll see how it sounds different over those three chords. 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Keep it the same. And I could do that with any part of that. That's the second phrase I'm playing now.
Sorry.
Do it some more, and I'll play the middle one. That's the middle motive. So what we've done is just to take those little motives, those little ideas, and present them in different settings, I think. And in a certain sense, that's what jazz is, and that's the way I approach it, is developing short ideas. What was the first jazz music that you heard?
Well, I guess that was, I think Wes Montgomery.
Yeah.
Friends introduced me a record called Boss Guitar.
Boss Guitar of Wes Montgomery, yeah,
And,
that's great.
Also, my guitar teacher then told me get the Jim Hall's.
Get Jim Hall, right?
Jim Hall's first record and Alone Together, because 2 records is very good.
Alone Together was
Ron Carter.
with Ron Carter.
Yeah.
Right. And the first one, the jazz guitar?
Yeah.
Oh, you have that?
Yes, I do.
Wow. Yeah, that was my very first record. The first album I did is called Jim Hall Jazz Guitar, with Red Mitchell on bass and Carl Perkins on piano. That's nice. The first jazz guitar that I heard was Charlie Christian on a record with Benny Goodman. It was a Benny Goodman sextet, and it was Charlie Christian. And I never got to see him play. He died really young, but that was a big influence on my life. So it seems that, first of all, for me, learning about jazz is a lifetime process. I mean, I'm sure you do the same thing. I still work on it every day. I listen to music all the time. I listen to all kinds of music. But I think that the process, in order to learn it, like if I were to learn Japanese, which would be incredibly difficult for me, I would probably have to live in Japan for a while and really practice and hear it all the time. And that's what it was like for me learning jazz. Even though I lived in America, I had to listen a lot, and I'm sure you have too. So.
Yes, being in New York gives me
It's a help.
lots of a chance to listen to great players.
Yeah.
Jazz dialect, which you call.
Right, the jazz. Yeah.
Jazz language of jazz.
Yeah. Yeah, it does take a lot. And also, if I were to learn rock and roll, I guess I would have to
Yeah, right.
change my hair and listen to a lot of rock and roll for a while. So for me, as I said a little earlier, this has been a kind of a lifelong process, and I still work at it every day, and it's great for me in so many ways because I travel a lot, and I find people all over the world, in Japan, in Europe, in South America, who play jazz music, and and I can play music with people that I can't even talk
Speak
to. Right, so the language isn't any problem. also, it keeps changing. Your playing keeps changing with you. Don't you find that?
I think so.
Yeah. Is it?
Somehow, I hope so too.
Yeah, right, yeah. I'm sure your experience of being in New York has changed your playing a lot, right?
I think so.
Yeah. So it's kind of a record of your personal growth, I think, you know, as well as a musical thing. It's a personal thing. It's like, it's similar to if you have a child and you want to see how the child grows and you draw a line at the top of the kid's head on the wall, right? And then in 2 years he's up and then he's further up. So it's a combination of fun and seriousness and lots of listening, I think. So it's work, but it's the kind of work that's really enjoyable, and it goes on forever. Let's talk about the sounds of the guitar a little bit. I know you have 2 pickups on your guitar. I never really noticed that before.
Well, mainly I use this front pickup. You have no choice.
Right, I have no choice. I just have this one. Yeah. So I kind of go for basically a mellow sound, I think. But that back pickup.
Yeah, some.
Oh, right. Oh, I see.
You know.
Oh, I see. Right.
Narrow.
Yeah. And then what about depending on where you play the guitar with your right hand, the picking? I mean.
Oh,
picking. Show how that changes the sound too.
Oh.
Depending on how close to the bridge you play.
Oh, I see.
Play some, oh, that's nice. Play some lines that way, then,
Okay,
with different sounds. Right, yeah. Right. And then also, depending on what string you play something on, right, it sounds quite different. Yeah, you're very brave to try that. That's all right. Right. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Maybe.
That's good with the open B. Yeah. Right. So this A flat and this one and this one and this one, each has a different sound from the other. And I think that's good to explore. In fact, a lot of times I practice just on one string, maybe. Maybe 2 strings. I think that's really good practice for a number of reasons. One is that what we talked about earlier, that each one of those has a different sound. Each string has a different sound, and depending on what feeling or what texture that you want to get out of the guitar, you can pick and choose from different strings. Also, I think more important is that it helps you, by practicing on one string or 2 strings or whatever, it helps you to really start to hear the instrument, which is so important because jazz music, all improvised music, depends on hearing something and then playing it instantly. So the more control you have over what sound comes out, the better. If you're having to guess about what sound you're going to get, then you're in trouble right away. So this is a bit, playing on one string is a bit like playing the trombone, you know, where you have a wind.
Position?
Yeah.
Different
You have a
position.
wind column, an air column, and you just change the length of it. an interesting thing happens. If you play on just on one string for a while, you feel limited. But then if you just add one more string, it's like freedom. You're really,
Lots of freedom.
you're right, you have a lot of freedom to go. When I was working with Jimmy Giuffre, who was a great clarinet player and saxophone player, Jimmy had a lot of things written where I had to blend with the clarinet. So if Jimmy had something like, say, for the guitar and the clarinet, if I were to play it like picking all those notes, to Jimmy that sounds like tonguing on a trumpet or something.
Tonguing.
Right,
Okay,
so he would
odd.
say to me, find a different way to finger that. So I'd have to come up, or almost ending, to leave out the right-hand strokes. So I worked on that quite a bit over the years, and I do a lot of slurring with the left hand. And the right hand is kind of playing like what's called sweep picking nowadays, I guess, you know. Let's see what.
Oh,
Right, just in one direction, pretty much. The idea with the right hand is just to set the string in motion, and the rest of it's done with the left hand. So that's just two strokes, really. Just a downstroke instead of which is a different way to do it. A lot of the guys playing today have incredible you have a really nice right hand technique. Most of my technique is in the left hand, I think. That's almost nothing with this hand. It's all with the left hand. That's all. That was all just one stroke. I just let the hand fall.
Pat Metheny and or John Scofield, they use that kind of technique.
Yeah, they both use that. They both have very good right hand technique too. Pat Metheny has a fantastic technique. And one thing I love about John Scofield's playing is the variety he gets in his sound. But I think sometimes he pinches the strings, and sometimes he plays down here, and sometimes up here.
Oh, variety in the sound.
Variety of sound, right. But a lot of what I do is based on left-hand technique. And the right hand is, for me, is basically to set the string in motion, just to get it started, and for accents, as opposed to picking alternate picking, which is also important as a tool. But again, it's similar. It's just like tonguing on a wind instrument. So I think the main thing is to be aware of what you're doing and what kind of sound comes out with it, I think. I think dynamics.
Dynamics.
You're talking about loud and soft and thick and thin and all those things. Yeah. I really think they're very important attention-keeping devices, for one thing, because, for instance, everything on a high string would get boring. I think that's the that's the secret, is that things get boring if they don't change. So maybe dynamics within a phrase. You know, loud and soft, and also different dynamics in terms of thick and thin. Like this I would consider thin. And this a little thicker. So I work with all those elements, again, the same way that a painter might, with different colors, and different shades. Um, and occasionally, if I'm playing a tune that has a middle part, like a bridge, um, like on Body and Soul, of one of the other standards, I might play the middle part of it different from the way I played the other, just for contrast.
For the bridge.
Yeah, maybe I'll play the bridge with chords and play the beginning with single line, or vice versa. So I consider those elements to be dynamics in a different sense, besides loud and soft. And I think it's the same with all music of all cultures, really. It's contrast, I guess, to keep the attention. They're all attention-keeping devices, getting and keeping somebody's attention. The same as it's when I'm talking or when you're talking. For a long time, I resisted using any foot pedals because I thought of them as kind of gimmicks. And then little by little, Bob Brookmeyer wrote a piece for me one time for it was symphony orchestra and electric guitar. So Bob had me using a chorus foot pedal, a distortion foot pedal, and a wah-wah pedal, I think. Maybe 4.
Oh.
But so I was dancing all over like Fred Astaire. And it occurred to me as I was doing that a lot of the big bands, like Duke Ellington's band, for instance, used also, I think that's where the wah-wah term was invented, with the mute that the trumpets did, you know, like wah-wah, wah-wah, that sort of thing.
I see.
So my excuse for using foot pedals, if I need one, is that it has to do with orchestration for me. And I try to use them in the way that an orchestrator would, and I try not to overuse them. Because I think if you play with the foot pedal on all the time, then you've spoiled the whole effect. Then it sounds common. Another thing that happens, I think a positive thing with foot pedals, is that it sort of throws your mind into a different
frame of mind.
Different frame of mind, right? And you start thinking differently. I use the chorus pedal a little bit on that. Right, this one. I used that earlier on when we were playing that thing in G minor. It gives it a little bit of a distance effect. That's with it on, and this is with it off. So that presents a slightly different color there, same as in a painting. But if I left it on for the whole evening, then you wouldn't even notice it. And then when I did the Miro piece, I used this other foot pedal, which is tuned, is set for thirds, the whammy foot pedal. So I would just use that for certain effects, or if I want a real dissonant effect. For quite a while, I was trying to do things like Don Pullen does on the piano, where he plays that way on the piano. And I was getting him, almost hurting myself. And it got dangerous. So Larry Goldings, my piano player, said I should get a foot pedal, which does it for me. It's just much easier. So it's a little bit of a lazy way out. But also it has kind of a mysterious effect, I think. And I could never play thirds that fast without it. Unless you had a 12-string guitar. So that's my reason, my excuse for using foot pedals. The other thing that I really work on in my own playing is taking a little motive, like 3 or 4 notes, and developing it. So if we were to, let's see, if I were to play on this blues again, maybe, and just use that mode. I changed it a bit. So I do that sort of thing a lot. Take a short idea and develop it in order to get more control over the.
Which makes your solo memorable.
I think,
to
yeah,
the audience.
yeah, and by working on with material that you've invented yourself like that on a spur of the moment, it makes each solo a little different and, as you said, memorable. And if I were to play, say, a standard ballad, like that thing that we talked about earlier, which is it's similar to the chords to I Should Care, maybe in E flat, we could play a ballad that way. I would play that quite differently, but I'll do the same thing with developing the motive if I can. About 1, 2, 3, 4. tried to stay with a little idea that you were playing such nice chords that I think I got off of the motive, but that was quite different from what we played on the blues, I think. I think one of the really important things in jazz music, any music, and probably in all of life, really is to have some direction, some kind of rhythm and arrival points. And I think that's what chord progressions are all about, like 2-5-1 has a direction, and right, like an upbeat and a downbeat. Same as the pulse in the body has it. Yeah, right, like an in and out and up and down. I think that's all related, and the same that applies to playing a line in music. So maybe we could just play on that chord progression for a while, like 2-5-1 in G major. So you'll have A minor 7th, right, to D 7th, you know those chords, and to G, and we'll do that for a while, like about 1, 2, 3, 4. Some direction in. We'll play on it for a while. Take it out. Nice. We should publish that. That was beautiful.
Is transcribing is important to the guitar student?
I guess because jazz is a language or a dialect of a musical language, that you probably have to do everything possible to learn it. And I learned maybe just 1 or 2 solos when I was a kid. I learned one of Charlie Christian's that I liked a lot, which was on a blues. And I learned, I think, 1 solo of Barney Kessel's.
So you didn't do much transcribing?
Not so much. But what I did, and I want to ask you about the same thing, what I did was I would try to get the general feeling of what somebody was doing.
Instead of transcribing one note by note?
Yeah, instead of specific notes. For me, it was the feeling that was more important. Some people transcribe. Mike Stern still transcribes solos all the time. You do some of that too, I think, right?
Yes.
What did you transcribe, or did you learn some other solos, recorded solos of people when you were starting?
Yes, I transcribed your solo.
Okay, you owe me a dinner.
I don't have an answer about transcribing, but somebody told me transcribing, but you don't have to write on a paper, or somebody told me you have to write on the paper.
Mhm.
I think it depends on the
On the person.
person. You
Yeah.
know. What do you think about it?
I'm maybe too lazy to write things down, but I like the one of Charlie Christian that I remember. It was so clear. It was a blues in F again, same key that we played in earlier. But it's on a record called Grand Slam with the Benny Goodman Sextet, and Charlie plays. And that was such a great first phrase for me. That really got my attention. It's still, when I hear that record today, I still wonder what he's going to play next. So the first phrase, see. And then the second one. And then the next chorus starts like. And that was, for me, that was such a marvelous solo, partly because of its clarity. That first phrase. That's just great. That's like the first line of a short story. And I imagine that it sounds like he played with all downstrokes. I never saw him play, as I said. But I mentioned that it reminds me of writing, like short story writing in a way, because it's so clear. And what I was going to say earlier about the idea of transcribing is that I think, for me, it's important to listen to solos, listen to players who play other instruments, too.
Oh.
And so I listen to Lester Young a lot. I listen to Charlie Parker. I listen to Coleman Hawkins. I listen to lots of piano players. I listen to Bill Evans a lot. Again, not to get specific notes, but just to get the general idea.
Feeling.
Yeah. So I'm not sure. I think it depends on the individual whether or not you actually want to transcribe things. And writing them down, I think that would be good for your general music.
To gain your sight reading skill.
Right, sight reading and notation is really important. The more tools you have, the better, I think.
Sometimes, once you write it down on a paper, sometimes you forget.
You forget it anyway. Yeah, that's right.
Oh, I write it down, and job was done.
Yeah,
then,
right.
Then you forget.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's like then it's over.
Yeah. Sometimes, I think memorize a solo is maybe important.
I find that for me that would be more important than writing it down, except as a record of it, a recording of it. Another thing that I'm interested in, and I use a lot, is I like to get the idea of what the song is about that I'm improvising on. And if it's a ballad, I like to know what, if I don't know the exact words, I like to know what the words are about anyway. I think Lester Young was very interested in words, and so is Sonny Rollins. When I worked with Sonny, he would hear something maybe that Frank Sinatra had sung. He'd hear it on the radio, and so that we'd start playing that tune, but with that version of it in mind, with Sinatra's version. So I find that that's really important. So maybe we can sum this thing up a bit and then end with.
How about the? You think listening to only the guitarist would not be appropriate for those who the guitarist who wants to have own style.
Oh, their own, yeah, right. well,
own
again,
voice.
right. It's just, this is just my personal feeling on it. But for me, the beautiful thing about jazz music is that it allows you to find your own voice, your own way of saying things. Classical music, I imagine, is more limited in that the notes are pretty much set, although the ways of interpreting them vary a lot. But the great thing about jazz for me is that it can really be yours. It can be Satoshi Inoue, and doesn't have to be me or Charlie Christian. So it's very helpful to me to listen to players who play different instruments so that I don't imitate so much. Because if I listen to too many guitars, then I'll start to sound like the other guys. And that's, when I heard Wes Montgomery the first time, I knew I would never be able to do that anyway, what he did. So that helped me to find my own style. And also, I would much rather look at paintings sometimes than even listen to any kind of music. So I look at paintings and maybe do some reading, read some poetry. Mm-hmm. I think all those things help to find yourself.
Oh, I see.
And then
other than music.
Other than music,
you
right?
See, you read the books.
Yeah.
Go to a museum.
Yeah, I don't read very much, but I'm careful about what I read. I don't read the news. I read poetry, though. So, and I do go to museums, and I like painting very much. I like food very much too. So, I guess the main point is that I draw inspiration from all different kinds of things, besides music, poetry and painting and food and things, and scenery, nature, I guess, in order to express those things on the guitar. And the technique of playing the guitar, like just the physical part of it, I think that, I mean, I would suggest that you had a teacher when you first started, right?
Not really.
You started by yourself?
I was watching a TV. There was a program for
a learning program.
Yeah, learning program.
Uh-huh. But anyway, then you had a teacher later.
Yes, I did.
Yeah. And because I had a teacher at the very start when I first started. I had 2 or 3 teachers in a row. So I guess you can learn just the physical part of it from a teacher. Also, there's lots and lots of really good books about scales and arpeggios and picking technique. So what we've been talking about is a little more general and a little more just associated with music itself, as opposed to the technique of the guitar. For me, the things that I practice have to do with specific things that I'm working on personally. Maybe there's a song that I'm playing at work that I'm having trouble with, so I'll practice that and that sort of thing. But I do practice, I shouldn't say constantly, but almost constantly. And if I don't practice for a couple of days, my hand starts to feel terrible. And we're going to finish this first volume of the teaching videos with a piece that's dedicated to my friend, the cartoonist Gary Larson, and it's called Whistle Stop.